Hello and welcome to DSW's Endpoint Assessment for the Level 4 Associate Project Manager Standard. My name's Isabel, I'm a product owner at DSW and I'll be talking you through this standard today. This recording is designed to give you an overview of what will happen during endpoint assessment, what to expect when it will take place, but also how apprentices can prepare and what support is available. By the end of this, you should have a clear understanding of how the process will work and what the requirements are. And of course, if there are any questions or anything you need more information on, we'll show you where to go for any additional support at the end of the recording. Today we'll be discussing what the endpoint assessment process looks like, how and when it will be delivered, what happens during the assessment itself, and we'll go into more detail about the Associate Project Manager Standard, how each assessment method works, and how it will be graded. What is endpoint assessment? This is what we call the series of assessments an apprentice must take to prove they are able to do the job for which they've been training. These take place once the on-programme period is complete and the apprentice is deemed ready for endpoint assessment. Endpoint assessment is focused on the apprentice proving competence in their role through the work they have done and forms 100% of the assessment of this apprenticeship. DSW create assessment materials in line with robust design principles that are recognised by Ofqual. These principles are validity, reliability and comparability, manageability and minimising bias. This means you can be assured that our assessments are appropriate for the standard, that everyone will get the same experience, that the assessments will be consistent and fair, and that everyone will have a chance to succeed. When does endpoint assessment happen? Endpoint assessment begins when the on-programme phase has been completed, the mandatory qualification has been completed. This should be a project management qualification recognised by the IPMA at level D or an APM project management qualification. Maths and English functional skills have been achieved or proof of exemption provided, such as a GCSE grade C, and the employer and apprenticeship training provider agree that the apprentice is competent. This next stage is called Gateway, and it's when the apprentice begins preparing for the endpoint assessment process. What happens during endpoint assessment? The apprentice completes the assessments detailed in the assessment plan. There is still an expectation that the apprenticeship training provider will support apprentices throughout the endpoint assessment period. This is to ensure that they are familiar with what's to come and so mock exams can be completed. In order to pass and be deemed competent, the apprentice must pass all of the assessments. This typically happens over a period of 3 months from the point they are approved for Gateway. Here we have an overview of the assessment methods used for the Associate Project Manager Standard. It's made up of 2 components. We have the presentation supported by portfolio of evidence, which is 40 minutes. The panel will comprise a minimum of 2 members. This may include a representative from the employer or training provider, but must include the endpoint assessor. We also have a professional discussion, and that lasts for 60 minutes. We'll look at each method in a bit more detail now. Portfolio of evidence. The portfolio should be compiled from the best work gathered during the on-programme stage of the apprenticeship. It should enable the apprentice to demonstrate their application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the standard. The portfolio will be used to support the presentation, but it will not be assessed or graded. Although the portfolio is not assessed, building a strong portfolio gives the apprentice a solid foundation to use in the professional discussion. When planning the apprentice's work, their employer should ensure that they are involved in projects with a broad enough scope to address the 15 chosen learning areas and that they will be able to evidence the relevant knowledge, skills and behaviours expected. It's the responsibility of the employer and the apprentice's mentor, where appropriate, to help guide the apprentice in choosing appropriate evidence for the portfolio. Of the 15 areas chosen for the portfolio, 5 will be the focus of the presentation. The remaining 10 will be covered during the professional discussion. The portfolio will be submitted to DSW 1 month prior to the presentation and professional discussion taking place. Panel members will review the evidence and use it to help them prepare for the professional discussion. This can be uploaded to EPA Pro as a zip folder, or you can provide us with a link to your ePortfolio platform. Context statement. When we refer to a context statement, we want to know what the apprentice has done in a specific situation, who, what, where, why and when. Really building a picture behind a specific situation, and from there they can pull on pieces of product and performance evidence which demonstrate exactly what they have done in relation to their context statement. It's a great way for apprentices to bring all of their evidence together and give a more rounded picture of what they're capable of. They do need to make sure that they corroborate what they have said in their context statement with evidence, as the statement is purely anecdotal. Evidence types. There's no minimum or maximum in terms of pieces of evidence that the apprentice can include in their portfolio. One piece of evidence could span several learning outcomes. You may also find that some learning outcomes require more than one piece of evidence to be mapped to them in order to evidence them in full. A piece of evidence might be a single document, or it may be a folder containing a number of documents which link together. The most important thing is that the entire learning outcome is covered in full, using a blend of evidence which is sufficient, authentic, relevant, and current. More information and guidance on providing evidence can be found in the toolkit. We'll go now on to different types of evidence. Types of evidence. As you can see, there's a wide range of evidence types, and this list is not exhaustive. There should be a blend of evidence types, and you may find that the evidence you choose to provide is different to what appears here, which is absolutely fine as long as it's demonstrating the learning outcomes. We do ask that videos and recordings are a maximum of 2 hours, and they will need to be time-stamped in the referencing table. Please refer to the toolkit for more information on evidence types. The presentation and professional discussion will take place via web conference. It will be assessed by a panel consisting of a minimum of 2 people. The endpoint assessor, who will chair the assessment and make the final decision on the grade, and the second person will be from the apprentice's workplace, ideally their line manager or a representative from the training provider. Members of the employer or training provider may provide guidance and clarification to the independent assessor in relation to the technical competencies demonstrated within the portfolio. The portfolio will have been reviewed and evaluated prior to the presentation and professional discussion, with questions developed to test the apprentice's understanding. The presentation and professional discussion will take place over web conference, and the endpoint assessor will set up and communicate the relevant link to the assessment. Both assessments would usually take place on the same day. However, a flexible approach can be discussed with the endpoint assessor at the planning meeting. We recommend that the apprentice tests out the web conferencing platform in advance to ensure they're comfortable with technology being used and minimise the likelihood of technical issues arising on the day of the assessment. The presentation will focus around the 5 learning areas which the apprentice chose for the presentation. It allows the apprentice to explain in detail the evidence that's been presented in their portfolio, giving them a chance to elaborate on it as well as demonstrate their communication skills to the panel. There will be an opportunity after the presentation to allow for a Q&A. The presentation will last for 30 minutes and the Q&A will last for 10 minutes with an additional 10% at the discretion of the assessor. The apprentice should present using a method of their choice, ensuring the presentation can be shared or presented over web conferencing. The professional discussion is a structured discussion between the apprentice and the panel. The purpose of the professional discussion is to allow the endpoint assessor to question and seek clarification for the 10 learning areas chosen to be assessed by this method. Confirm and validate judgments on how the apprentice has met the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the standard, and explore aspects of the apprentice's work, including how it was carried out, in more detail. The professional discussion will be led by the DSW endpoint assessor, who will identify questions to be asked, ask the questions and make the final assessment decision. The employer or training provider are there to provide context to any of the responses provided by the apprentice. It is of critical importance that the panel members do not attempt to lead or prompt the apprentice in any way. They must not answer on behalf of the apprentice or paraphrase any of the apprentice's responses. To do so could invalidate the assessment and lead to a fail result being issued. At the end of the discussion, the apprentice will leave, so the panel members will have an opportunity to discuss the apprentice's performance in the discussion. At this point, the employer or training provider may offer further context and clarification on the responses provided by the apprentice. However, they must not elaborate or provide any additional information to enhance the responses provided by the apprentice. The apprentice and assessor both need to be visible for the duration of the discussion. However, the other panel members may join by audio only if preferred. The discussion will be recorded for quality assurance purposes. At the end of the presentation and professional discussion, the assessor will complete the referencing table with their final decision and provide written feedback. The outcome and feedback will then be forwarded to the training provider within 5 working days. Apprentices are able to achieve fail, pass, merit or distinction in this standard. For the presentation supported by portfolio of evidence, each of the 5 learning areas selected for assessment will be scored out of 5, and each score will be added together to give a total score out of 25. For the professional discussion, each of the 10 learning areas selected for assessment will be scored out of 5 to give a total score out of 50. The total scores for both the presentation and professional discussion will then be added together to give an overall total score out of 75. For an apprentice to achieve a pass, they must achieve a minimum score of 45 out of 75. To achieve a merit, they must achieve between 56 and 65. To achieve a distinction, they must achieve between 66 and 75. Thank you for watching. We hope this has been helpful. As always, we're happy to help if you have any questions or need any more information, so please do get in touch. You can email us at info@dswapprenticeships.co.uk or give us a call on 01302 760 008. Thank you.